All right. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Derek Smith. I am an Azure Cloud Evangelist. I work at a large national ISV called Trace3. So believe it or not, as I get to do these fun community events like talking to all of you, I get to do that as my day job. So it's a fun, awesome thing that I get to do what I love, both normally and externally, I guess is the best way I could put it. Hold obviously a number of Azure certifications, as you guys can see there. But if you guys ever want to connect with me on social, my feeds are down here. But mostly we're going to be chatting about how you can help modernize your security operations center with Microsoft Sentinel. Yes, they did drop Azure from the name and slide it in Microsoft. And this is really around the fact that Sentinel is not just an Azure solution. It really is a broader Microsoft security solution because of its ability to not only work within the Azure cloud, but work with AWS, Google, Oracle, IBM cloud, right? Any multi-cloud and type of environment, but as well as a hybrid cloud too. So it's not just something within Azure anymore, right? They've broadened its scope, which was always its scope from, I think, from the get-go. But I think this little name change here helps kind of identify this. We're going to be really trying to solve a couple of points as it relates to a couple of things that I think Sentinel addresses from a very key perspective. And that really is around a lot of organizations and a lot of, if you work kind of on my side of the fence, right, with customers, you typically see in an enterprise environment, there's a number of different multi-point solutions that organizations over the years have tried to stitch together as to kind of create their own security platform, or they have certain dev organizations who build their own security solutions. And it just never quite either fits the need of the organization, or it becomes kind of a struggle jumping between various panes of glass or different skill sets that all SOC analysts needs to kind of handle each of these different environments. And so really we've now seen this kind of affects the overall operation of a SOC, right? There's all these operational model challenges that organizations are facing. Organizations are getting larger, and so now you're potentially having to deal with multiple geos as it relates to a SOC environment, right? So you might have a global SOC and then like a regional SOC. So then you're trying to figure out how to operationalize that type of model. Or maybe your company or a customer's company acquires another company, so then you have to factor in that aspect. So a lot of challenges around that, and ultimately, scalability. And I think this is kind of where the original idea behind Sentinel was born out of, is these scalability issues around on-prem solutions, right? Their licensing model, their ability to only really scale on a per VM or per hardware type basis was a real challenge for a lot of security organizations, especially in today's world with the amount of threat identifiers and threat indicators that are coming in. They just don't really scale all that well, even on a virtualized environment. There's still some limitations. And so really truly having this cloud native capability that I don't want to say has infinite scalability, because that's an inaccurate statement, but I'll say near infinite scalability really helps kind of address that fundamental need from a SOC perspective. And then the ability to infuse artificial intelligence and machine learning into the SIM process, right? As Caitlin alluded to earlier, we're in somewhat of a staffing shortage right now from an IT perspective, and everybody's looking to hire somebody. But within the world of security, it's even worse. Prior to the pandemic, there already was a cloud security shortage. There literally was not enough people to address that need, and now it's gotten even worse because of the Great Resignation and all of that. That's kind of led up to it being a candidates market. So organizations now more than ever are trying to find a way to make automation a core component of their security strategy, because at any given moment, their staffing may just vanish. And so that's a real fear and a real challenge that we'll discuss. And then obviously, last but not least, zero trust. We've heard this in this day and age as a critical component to an overall security strategy, and how we can leverage something like Sentinel to really kind of help us identify the various threats along a zero trust model as it comes into our environment. Now, as we talked about today, right, organizations are under constant IT threats. Can be internal, can be external to the organization, right? The landscape is typically all over the place. Most organizations operate in some type of hybrid environment, so on-prem, cloud, mobile workforce, sticking with our healthcare theme, IoT devices, right? Those vectors are just becoming too vast and too broad for most traditional SOCs to handle. And so with that skill deficiency that we talked about, specifically within IT security space, right? The amount of applications is growing at an exponential rate. The amount of devices that organizations are having to keep track of and secure and maintain is also growing at an absolute exponential rate. Security teams are just under a constant level of struggle. So how do we leverage something like Microsoft Sentinel to address this, right? We want to strengthen that position that security teams have, and that's kind of where the SIM tool was born out of. And they have long served in that role to kind of help correlate all of that information. But those tools have to have the right skills, the right integrations, and that's really been a challenge for a lot of enterprise organizations, especially coupled with a lot of these outdated processes and reactive methods. A lot of organizations that I talk with today, large enterprises, are realizing that their SOC processes, their incident response methods are not well positioned in today's environment. And so now they're having to completely upend the culture and upend all of that and put something in new to really address today's landscape and today's environment and quickly. It's not something that they could potentially build out over 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, because by the time you're done, you're already going to be outdated again. And with that, right, is that increased agility perspective, right? The scale, the complexity, the rate of change in enterprise environments is no longer what it used to be. And so therefore, our traditional SIM solutions that are frankly very expensive to build and run have become outdated and somewhat wasteful. They produce a tremendous amount of data, but they're overwhelming a lot of our human analysts. Alert fatigue is a heavy issue that has not gone away, and investigations often take very long to identify any potential breaches. I think the current average identification of a potential breach is somewhere in the neighborhood of between 6 to 8 months. So you're talking about a very long time in which an organization may not even be completely aware that somebody is in there just siphoning off data. And so this has shifted a lot of methodologies in SecOps capabilities, right? Adopting machine learning, but not necessarily adopting machine learning in the way we think about it, right? A solution like Sentinel, while it does have machine learning built in, it has a further machine learning capability that we'll talk about in a little bit later. But it's finding those specific security analysts that have machine learning knowledge, that data scientist knowledge. And it's proving to be incredibly difficult because even if those analysts are lucky enough to get access to those right resources, right, you have to develop these enterprise specific models from scratch. And that's a huge hill to climb on top of the already mountain of stuff that they have to deal with. So when we talk about how we can help address this from a Sentinel perspective and an overall architecture perspective, right? SecOps teams know that roughly, what is it, about 3.5 million jobs back in 2021. We're in 2022. are unfilled, right? And so, that stress, that ability to get that skill set has become a huge challenge. And so Sentinel is slided into this space as a cloud native capability to really help those teams operate in a very successful security strategy that I think can help, I don't want to say completely address the issue, but really kind of help shift the organizational thinking around how to use data at scale, fueling that machine learning model, and really power a SOC into a more modern type architecture. Now, again, Sentinel was purpose-built to handle this situation, right? With that increased reliance on the AI and ML models to make up for that shortage. But the amount of security data that's still needing to be analyzed is still growing higher and higher and higher. And so this SIEM as a service really was built to scale along with that data scalability. And leveraging that power of the cloud really helped fuel an organizational adoption or an organizational shift amongst a lot of the larger enterprises to combine it with these proprietary AI ML model services, right, to automate a lot of those tasks that a typical human analyst had to handle in a more outdated environment. Now, as we look at a modern, I won't say modern, a more up-to-date operations center, and I'm sure hopefully a lot of you have seen this diagram. If not, I highly encourage you to go track it down. It's available on the Microsoft Docs Center. But as we look at kind of this tiered structure from an overall SOC methodology, right? Sentinel was really purposely built to be the central tool as part of your overall security strategy, your overall security architecture. And what I mean by that is the SIEM now becomes this central pane of glass, right? You may have an identity management solution. You may have an endpoint or mobile solution. You might have an information protection solution, you name it, right? All these various different types of solutions. And that truly doesn't matter. So long as you have that ability to provide the integration, to provide that connection to all these various solutions, I don't have to necessarily go into that solution by itself. And so really that's where Sentinel, leveraging not only its API connector capability, but its adoption of various security standards, really helped fill in that space of not necessarily being a overarching downside from a integration perspective. So whether it's syslog, whether it's CIF, whether it's REST API or Taxi for threat intelligence, right? It really can dive into any various platform that you may already have or leverage and pipe it into Azure Sentinel. Now, even if you don't necessarily want to rip and replace your old SIEM or your legacy SIEM, right? You might still need some data out of there, or you may have a huge investment in there. That's okay, right? You can still leverage your Splunks or your Arc sites or your QRadars, and Sentinel actually has the ability to funnel its data that it learns from into those type of solutions if you're unable to reduce that debt or get rid of that debt from that perspective. Now, on top of the ability for it to be that central capability, now relies on our ability to provide a platform that the analysts can actually perform their investigations on and visualize that data. And I know a lot of us today sit here, it's the age of everything is code. All right, I want to be able to code everything. But there's something to be said about being able to kind of visually see how something is moving through an environment. And so with the power of the KQL language, which hopefully everyone is familiar with if you've touched a log analytics workspace or spent a lot of time within Azure Monitor, all right, this is Microsoft's custom query language that they developed to be a part of the monitoring process. And so with that ability to then filter through that data to identify any of those potential threats with your workbooks, you can then enable a more proactive analytic alert based on those queries that you're using. Or if you want and you don't want to develop your own, you can leverage any of the out-of-box machine learning based alerts. Now, once that's been triggered, right, Sentinel enables the SOC analyst to either perform that same manual investigation task with these visual investigations, if you so choose, or we can leverage a different type of investigation. And that different type of investigation can be handled through some of our extended detection response capabilities. Now, those conventional detection tools may not necessarily be able to detect all of the various threats that will live within our organization, and combining all of that data from all of the various tools and products within the organization, backed by those threat intelligence sources, right, really allow the analysts to detect and analyze and mitigate those threats. Now, we do have a couple of what are called fusion-based alerts to help identify anomalous behavior, or UABA. All right, and how that moves across Microsoft standardized on the MITRE attack framework. And so we look at that cyber kill chain, right? And depending on where it leverages its capabilities within the cyber kill chain, we can kind of help see what stage it's at and kill off the threat before it even gets to a certain further depth and mitigate that damage. Now, SecOps can obviously take a look at further XDR capabilities around ingesting things from, like, say, Microsoft 365 Defender, or Cloud App Security, right? All of the various point solutions under the M365 Defender umbrella all can be ingested in. I can then also bring in things from Azure AD, like identity protection. I can bring things from on-prem, like my Windows event logs, my security event logs from that, right? So I'm being able to bring in all of those various capabilities within a full XDR-based capabilities. Now, if you haven't ever seen kind of how UBA works, UBA basically is a advanced alerting capability that takes a look at the behavior of your organization. So I'm going to sit there and watch your on-prem. I'm going to sit there and watch how your users are behaving in your SaaS environment. I'm going to ingest all of those logs into Sentinel, right? And the engine's going to sit there and take a look. And I'm going to see, did Derek go and log in from Southern California this weekend? Well, he did. And then maybe he continued to stay in Southern California. But then, so I'm kind of getting this picture of frame that, maybe I think Derek lives in Southern California. Then all of a sudden, maybe I see Derek log in from New York City. Now, most of us know that, the Azure AD has the capability to say, hey, is it impossible travel? But really, more so beyond what the UBA engine then takes a look at is, did I get to New York and am I performing similar tasks from an identity perspective within my applications when I'm in New York? If the answer is yes, then really the UBA engine doesn't necessarily view it as an anomaly, right? Maybe my travel is within a reasonable amount of time. I'm still accessing my applications the same way I did in Southern California. I'm not doing anything really out of the norm, right? So it's developing that baseline of user behavior, that user capabilities on top of the additional identity protection capabilities that you may have. Now, if an anomaly does get obviously surfaced, an alert is triggered, and we can handle that alert using our traditional manual method, or we can leverage an automation method based on that suspicious activity. Now, for years, obviously, cybersecurity attacks have been very reactionary in nature, especially with SecOps typically reacting to alert that's been raised. Now, most enterprise even large enterprise organizations do have fairly limited resources, especially when it comes to security operations. And with that shifting focus that we've seen within the last 2 years, and more so, I think, even this year in 2022, we need to get more out of reactionary and more to proactive. And we need those resources who are not only able to understand the complex IT security solutions, but also have the ability to seek out attacks or seek out alerts before they've even been raised. And so this is where Sentinel, from a overall SOC capability, has really kind of helped provided a more modern approach, right? Common sports phrase, the best defense is a good offense. Take the same approach, right? If I'm out there offensively hunting within my Sentinel environment that I've connected to all my data sources, and I'm actively looking and going on the offensive against a lot of these things, these hunting queries, and along with the guidance, right, assist those SecOps teams with finding those anomalies within their data instead of waiting for something to happen. Now, there is a large pre-built library of hunting queries. However, you can still build your own, and that's the awesome power of Sentinel. It can be built in a way that you see fit. You can go out into GitHub and leverage something that maybe a community member has already built, or if you're really skilled at Python, you can code your own threat hunting capability. It does leverage a Azure machine learning workspace. So you will need to spin up a Azure machine learning workspace to go ahead and generate your own threat hunting query. It's backed by the Jupyter Notebook standard. But once you spin up that Azure ML workspace, you can go ahead and leverage your Python skills and kind of start identifying various insights based on what you want the model to look for, whether it's endpoint detection or additional user behavior, or maybe it's something from a network segmentation perspective. All of this is capable within a threat hunting environment. Now, I talk about machine learning, right? And this kind of evolution of a security analyst being able to also put on that data scientist hat. And threat hunting is that future, that evolution that I see a lot of security operations centers needing to take, especially with something like Microsoft Sentinel. So whether your organization is in its infancy with machine learning, which many organizations still are, you can absolutely leverage the built-in models. However, as you begin to grow and look at your various unique challenges that an organization may face, or maybe you see a multitude of challenges that organizations face, right? You can start building out your own custom machine learning model and post that in GitHub, or train that model within multiple different customer environments if you're working in, say, like a CSP fashion. So kind of climbing up this little ladder that we see here, you can see that we want to get to a point eventually where you are advanced in a machine learning investment, where not only are you leveraging your own machine learning models, but you're combining them with a Microsoft-based template. So you're getting the best of both worlds from a Sentinel perspective, right? And that's only capable within Microsoft Sentinel, right? I can bring in my own machine learning model. I can bring the power of Microsoft's machine learning capabilities that their own security team is developing, and combining the two and really getting that best of breed from a security analytics perspective as well as a machine learning perspective. Now, I hate manually doing investigations. I'm sure a lot of you, if you're in the security space, don't like doing it either. If you're not in the security space, I recommend you taking a day in their shoes to see how much fun a manual investigation is. It's not entirely super fun, but it involves collecting all of this data, right? Generating all those meaningful alerts, and then identifying various patterns that play across that, right? But responding to that is a huge challenge, right? And the SecOps teams, right, through that manual process, right, there's all these incidences. How do you decide which one to address first? And so that automation has now become the standard in which we need to respond to various threats. No longer the manual investigations should be essentially, I don't want to say the last line of defense, but pushed way towards the back. I don't want to involve a security operations analyst unless there's just some far out anomaly that some form of automation just simply cannot respond to. And so without that skilled labor, we're seeing this huge investment in a SOAR capability, or security orchestration, automation, and response. And so really, Sentinel was designed not only to be a first-class cloud SIM tool, but also that SOAR solution capability for a multi-cloud hybrid type environment. And it does this through the power of Azure Logic Apps. And it's through that capability, through that integration with Logic Apps and its powerful orchestration engine and its powerful API connector capability to really tie you into any facet of software or tool or any capability that gives Sentinel its ability to orchestrate an entire workflow based on the type of threat that is triggered, the type of alert that is received. All right, I can go ahead and post a message in a Teams channel. I can send an email, and as long as I get an approval email back, right, I can kick off a conditional based statement that says, hey, as long as the email responder that I'm sending my message to said, yep, this shouldn't be happening, right, I can go ahead and block the user and say Azure AD, or I can block the IP in my firewall. I can trigger that VM to shut down. Maybe there's a VM that's under attack, and I can just say, hey, go ahead and trigger that things. I can create a record in my ITSM solution. So there's a lot of various methodologies that we can take around designing our orchestration within Azure Sentinel to respond to any multitude of different threats. And most organizations, it does take time, it takes energy to build out these capabilities, but within the Microsoft Sentinel capabilities, a lot of folks have taken a lot of time to pre-build some of these templates for you. And so you can take that and customize it to your own use case and really help accelerate your organization's capabilities around automation. And that's what makes Sentinel a game changer from a SOC modernization perspective. Now, as you can see here in my nice little picture, it's a little demo environment. I have about 179 security playbooks, right? And these are all within a environment to identify various incident triggers, or maybe I have a virus, or maybe I've got a subscription owner who shouldn't be there. Maybe I've got something around Jira that I need to identify, right? So SecOps teams can really leverage these playbooks, and they're portable, right? I can kind of take them to wherever I go to respond to a multitude of different alerts that they receive. Now, you can execute them manually if you so choose. Preferably, we want to execute them from a more automated perspective. So as we create our alerts, we create our behavioral start generating those behavioral analytics. We want to assign playbooks to those so that once that alert is triggered, it automatically kicks off my playbook. So I, as a SOC analyst, just have to come in, take a look maybe at my emails or my updates, and I can see that really nice email message that says, hey, this alert was showed up, triggered your security playbook. already remediated. So maybe I just need to go in and make sure that everything was okay. But other than that, right, that's probably a couple days, maybe a week of my time that was just saved. And if you just start building on those, the SOC analyst now becomes a lot less stressed, a lot less underburdened, and gives them the ability to really focus on more tactical things. And it's Sentinel that really kind of helped change the game from what a modern SOC can do. Now, when I'm talking about this modern SOC model, this is kind of the definition as we see it from a Microsoft perspective, right? It's this ability to bring built upon various third-party and Microsoft logs and tools, your servers, right? Your networking tools. If you're leveraging, I apologize, this is an old picture, but your Microsoft Defender for Cloud, right? All of that tie-in, that XDR capability, any of your Microsoft Cloud App Security or Defender for Office 365, Defender for Identity, along with Azure AD Identity Protection, Defender for Endpoint, right? All of these capabilities, right, give you the full XDR tie-in with Sentinel. Now, I know Microsoft 365 Defender is XDR kind of on its own, and it has its own investigative capabilities, but it's really, and at least in my view, Sentinel that really enhances and gives it a true extended detection and response capability from a overall Microsoft perspective, because you're only seeing one side of the picture when it comes to Defender and really the kind of that SaaS protection. There's the whole infrastructure side or multi-cloud side, right, that M365 can't really see from its perspective. So when we leverage the SIM and SOAR as the service capability, we really want to work with these specialized solutions and integrate and connect them into our Azure or Microsoft Sentinel service, as well as any third-party tools as needed. So we're targeting that master distribution malware. We're getting after those tailored or targeted malware environments. Fileless malware, right? Ransomware attacks, Log4j, all of these things, I think within 24 hours, we had a ability to mitigate, detect, and respond to those type of incidences within Microsoft Sentinel compared to other various solutions. And so having this modern model to respond to zero-day threats, to zero-day vulnerabilities, and be able to address them in an automated fashion within that time frame really is unheard of. And that's what's changing the game around a modern SOC within an enterprise environment. And it's all powered from a Microsoft Sentinel capability. Now, if there's something I want to impart with you today, as we have taken kind of this overarching architectural perspective from Azure Sentinel, or Microsoft Sentinel, I should say, is that you often don't want to commit to anything up front or incur any of that high infrastructure maintenance costs, right? Microsoft Sentinel provides you as a service SIM SOAR capability for your SOC, right? A bird's eye view across the entire enterprise, whether it's multi-cloud, it's a single cloud, it's on-prem, endpoint, mobile, you name it. So you're putting that power of the cloud together with a large scale or multiple large scale intelligence, not only from Microsoft security experts, but other security threat intelligences as well to work for you. And then as you follow the various practices outlined from within this, right, we can help you eliminate all of that extra setup, that maintenance, and really provide a scalable security architecture to meet the various needs within a modern SOC environment. Obviously, also while hopefully reducing costs as well as increasing visibility and control. So key takeaway, right? Sentinel, ingestion at scale, power of the cloud behind it, retire your expensive legacy SIEMs. We've seen a lot of even large scale organizations like IBM and others starting to even just do that on their own without needing needing customers to kind of do that for them. Efficiency within security operations is going up as more and more of them adopt a modern cloud-based SIEM approach. And that drive to reduce time to detection, a more focused response on legitimate threats, as well as improved workflows. And I talked about earlier, right, improving SOC processes, improving that IR response, all of that became born out of this capability of a cloud-first approach that Sentinel enables you to think of it as in a way of I just need to map out how a certain attack may come about, right? And then I can automate my response based on where that threat's coming in from. And I can focus my response more so on, those high-level legitimate threats and automate the way I respond to a lot more low-level, maybe probes or things of that nature, right? And kind of close those off. And then the workflow around a potential incident and how I respond to that, Sentinel is really taking a key driver to be leading in how I map out the incident, how it mapped across, what alerts were surfaced as I go. But on top of that, how do I proactively become a proactive IR? I can see the incident starting to happen and I can already respond to it before it even becomes to the level of the high severity. How do I take that offensive through threat hunting? And then finally, investing in machine learning. And this, I know, seems very daunting for a lot of organizations. It seems very daunting even to individuals. But I encourage you to go out and spend some time learning AI, ML, as their investment becomes larger. You as a security analyst, a security architect, a security engineer are going to need to have this skill as in order to advance or help a deal with a more modern approach from a security perspective, and being able to develop your own security models based on either a Jupyter framework perspective or maybe another perspective from that instance. And so as you hopefully continue to develop those various models, right, it not only will help you out your organization, but it can really help you showcase your expertise to the larger community in broader terms. All right. I'm going to pop up the chat somewhere.
Hey, Derek, there is a question in the chat. I can read it for you. Bill is asking, what are some good ways to get ready to go playbooks?
So the best way to get ready to go playbooks is going to be GitHub. There are, last time I checked, a couple thousand, if not more, in the GitHub repo. So I would encourage you to go out to GitHub. Microsoft obviously has their official repo, but there are a couple of good community-based ones from various folks that run those pages that have, just thousands of playbooks that they've built out already. Open to use, free to use, right? You just need to kind of go in, take a look at how they've orchestrated their particular playbook, maybe tweak it here and there, right? Because you want to make sure it's matching the needs of your business versus kind of how they've generalized it. But that's the best place I would start. And then obviously Microsoft's community one as well certainly can't hurt.
Hope that answers your question, Bill. There are two more questions, Derek, on the chat I can read out for you. And if anyone in the audience have any questions, you can actually now unmute yourself and you can ask that directly. So the next question, Derek, is Mike is saying, in your opinion, is Sentinel currently being deployed as a multi-cloud CM or SOAR solution, or?
It is. So a lot of clients that we're seeing now, I think probably about 2-3 years ago, I would have told you that most clients are deploying it, within Azure specifically, because, it was called Azure Sentinel, but more so, a lot more clients were just kind of staying home in a single cloud. Within, I would say, the last 18 months, that trend has dramatically shifted more towards hybrid and multi-cloud, especially as more SRE practices become prevalent in a lot of organizations. We're seeing workloads being dispersed through, 2 clouds or even 3 clouds, and it's not even the big 3. So I know you referenced Azure, AWS, and GCP. Seeing more Oracle pop up a lot, as well as IBM starting to pop up also. And so Microsoft Sentinel has the ability to tie into all of those workloads, especially given the lack of governance, I think, in a good number of organizations. End users can kind of spin up their own environment within a particular cloud provider. So being able to help and get that visibility into that is going to really help buffer your organization as it relates to any potential security threats that may come from said action.
Thanks, Derek. Hope that answers Mike's question. Next one is from William. He's saying, has anyone used a service provider to assist in their migration to Sentinel? If so, would you share who and would you recommend them?
Okay. I'm not gonna toot my own company's horn, so I will speak from an agnostic approach. Some good MSSPs out there. I would say by far, if you want some assistance as it relates to migrating to Sentinel, Blue Voyant is a good one. There's another company out in Colorado that I'm forgetting the name of. So I'll have to get back to you on William on who that specifically is. I apologize. They do a great job as well. And I absolutely recommend either of those providers. Obviously, sans myself and my own organization. But yeah, those would be great ones to leverage as a migration to Sentinel, as well as helping you out with developing your own playbooks and your own automation. They have some really good proprietary ones that they won't necessarily share with you, but they will share their knowledge around kind of what their thought processes are and how they kind of help develop. So you can, glean that information and start developing your own playbooks and workbooks out of their knowledge that they work with you on. All right. I see Bill's raising his hand. So, Bill, if you want to ask your question. Oh, you're muted.
I think he has been giving high five since you answered.
Oh, he's giving high fives. Okay.
Okay. Next question is from Wesley. He's saying, maybe I missed it, but assuming pricing by amount of data ingestion and retention, if I decided that I needed Sentinel, how could I understand what the cost would be? Is there a cost estimator for my environment?
There is a great cost estimator out there, developed by a fellow Microsoft MVP. I will go grab that link for you. But so far, out of all the different cost estimation tools that I've tried as it relates to Sentinel, his has been the most accurate. And so he takes into account all the various network devices you might have on-prem, Azure environments, M365 environments, things of that nature. And his gets to be pretty accurate. Let me stop sharing my screen here and I'll go grab that link. But yeah, Wesley, his would be the most accurate tool from a cost estimator perspective.
By the time Derek gets that link, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. You can ask the questions directly to Derek.
All right, here it is. All right, so I'm dropping this in the chat. So you can see it's on version 1.5, so it's continually being updated to take into account, updated methods, newer tools, newer technologies, things various organizations might be leveraging. So I think this one, the latest version is from, let's see here. This was last updated on July of 2021. So six months old. So yeah, but by far one of the better estimator tools that I've seen.
Thanks for sharing that, Derek.
Yeah.
Mostly check that out. Hopefully that.
Yeah, it does take into account also the free sources, right? So remember that Microsoft does give you free credits for ingesting certain sources of their own. So that log calculator does take that into account. And that's probably honestly one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of other service providers, ISVs, VARs who are pitching Sentinel as a solution or trying to do that. They often give customers a relatively inaccurate pricing count because they're not taking into account some of the free capabilities. So I see one of the common things I run into is people telling me that, some third-party SIM, well, it's a lot cheaper than Sentinel. And I was like, well, can you show me the pricing? And then I look at it and then I compare it to this calculator. And I'm like, don't think they did this right, because here's what it should be based on what we're seeing from that perspective. So yeah, powerful tool to leverage from that perspective.
Awesome. Derek, do you have last conclusion?
I highly encourage anybody, as they look at Sentinel, do go out and dive into the Microsoft Security has been really good about putting out ninja trainings. So there is one for Sentinel. It was taken over by Sarah Young from the Microsoft, from Ofer Shizef. So I met Ofer back at Ignite about 2.5-3 years ago, when Sentinel first just came out. So I've talked to him about that, that project. That thing is his baby. He absolutely loves it. But he is literally the guy who built Sentinel. So I encourage you, if you're getting into Sentinel, you're migrating to Sentinel, and you want to dive into that, start with the Ninja training, and then Microsoft has the official SC200 certification that you can go and take. Sentinel is by far the bulk of the exam. You do see some stuff on M365 Defender, Microsoft Defender for Cloud in the exam as well. But predominantly it is more Sentinel focused for obvious reasons from that perspective. So I do encourage you to go out and take a look at that training as well.
Thanks, Derek. And if anyone in the audience would like to reach out to Derek, he is present on both LinkedIn and Twitter. I guess he was sharing his socials in his introduction slide. And feel free to reach out to him. He can certainly help you out if you have any questions in regard to Sentinel or his presentation today. With that, on behalf of the user group, Derek, I would like to thank you once again for taking time out to present. And thank you once again for our sponsors, Medical Solutions, for sponsoring this event today.